Dear Venerable Brothers, Venerable Sisters and Dhamma friends, we are going to start the second Dhamma sermon of this English medium retreat, 315th retreat at Nissarana Vanaya. May you give your consent by saying Sadhu Sadhu. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Samadhim bhikkhave bhaveta samahito bhikkhave yata bhutang pajanati ti. Dear friends in Dhamma, dear Venerable Brothers and Sisters, actually we were started an interesting sutta which is available in the Satya Sangyutta, where we are dealing with the Four Noble Truths. So there actually Buddha mentioned that we need to develop certain amount of concentration so that we are able to look at things properly or to understand things as they truly are. Samadhim bhikkhave bhaveta yata samahito bhikkhave yatha bhutam pajanati. Monks, you got to develop mind, you got to develop concentration. Let's keep it the term for the time being as concentration. And once you are able to have that, then you are able to understand things as they truly are. So as we yesterday touched upon this, basically how much concentration we need, what are the different approaches available is kind of a open question. So different approaches are available. It is not just one approach available, as even we discussed during the discussion session. So certain approaches Buddha recommended for certain individuals and certain other approaches recommended to certain other individuals. So likewise, many approaches are available. It is not that only one approach is available. On the other hand, if we are practicing mindfulness and we are continuing our path into the Vipassana approach, so we might not need a very deep concentration. So that is something that we can look into. But on the other hand, if you are more interested in samatha and you are more concerned about developing deep concentrations, attaining jhana, and after emerging from jhana, practicing vipassana, so that is also available. It is not, we need to deny, that is also available. That is sometimes we call as samatha pubbangama vipassana, where one is able to attain jhana, attain deep concentrations, and after emerging from that, so what are the available different types of feelings, very subtle feelings, subtle perceptions, subtle kind of formations, mental formations particularly available. So that can be carefully scrutinized, carefully investigated, and then you are into the Vipassana side. That is also available. Mentioned in certain suttas like, say, Mahamalunkyaputta Sutta, for example, available in the Majjhima Nikaya. But on the other hand, there are many occasions where Buddha recognized the possibility of having enough or moderate type of concentration, focused attention. Then you are developing directly Vipassana. Through that, you are even getting certain amount of very parallel concentration, which is fairly equal to jhana. Sometimes Mahasi Sayadaw U Pandita call them as Vipassana Jhana. So that is also another interesting area that we can discover. So it is not that the qualities that we are talking in Jhana only limited to the very deep absorptions. Rather, the qualities that we are talking are still available at the little lower depth or little shallow levels, but still the certain necessary qualities, those jhana factors are still properly operating. So therefore these are very interesting areas that if one is interested, you can investigate, you can research. So especially in the Vipassana practice, in the Satipatthana practice, so that is what we are typically taking as the approach, where we develop certain amount of mindfulness, and as we develop mindfulness, so mind starts gathering, mind starts collecting. So the distractions become less and less. Fair amount of clarity of the mind going to arise. And so that you can look at the phenomena, various either bodily phenomena, either mental phenomena, carefully, easily, precisely. you are having that capacity. So looking at these different phenomena carefully, properly, is something necessary, by the way. That's why here even Buddha emphasized, Samadhim bhikkhave bhaveta. You got to develop concentration. Samahito bhikkhave yatha bhutam pajanati. When you are having that necessary amount of concentration, then you are capable of looking at things as they truly are. You are able to see things properly. They are behaving as their own way due to various causes and conditions. But now you as a yogi has the capacity to look at it properly. So that possibility to observe various phenomena is something necessary. So that skill have to be improved or developed. Now say for example, when we are developing say Anapanasati, so we are able to develop very fundamental level of mindfulness just by being aware of breathing. So when in-breath happens, we are aware, okay, in-breath happens. When out-breath happens, we are aware, okay, the out-breath happens. And when distractions happen, assume that we are for the time being completely distracted. Now a distraction is available on top of my head. So sometimes we can completely get distracted. But suppose as you are continuing your practice, so you become less distracted. Even though distractions are available, you become less distracted. You are able to maintain your attention on the selected object. That is what we do from the beginning of our walking practice. So various distractions are available and our eyes are quite open. Sounds are also available and we are also intentionally walking. Others are also walking around us. But at the same time, we are able to maintain our attention on the object. That is difficult at the beginning, challenging at the beginning. But at the same time, as we are doing that, continuing that, familiarizing that process, so we come to a position, yes, while the distractions are available, we can pay attention where it is necessary. It is not that we need to stop all the distractions. It is not that we need to close our eyes while walking. It is not that we have to ask everyone else to leave, I only have to walk. But while all these things are available, how about me keeping attention onto the necessary or selected object? So that's a kind of a skill that we are developing. So when that skill being developed, now it's a matter of kind of improving that, sharpening that skill. Suppose now you are able to maintain mindfulness for long distance, from this end to the other end, even while turning, while coming back for several rounds. So that means distractions are there, but still we have the capacity to maintain our attention. And that means the ability to sustain our attention has developed. Now it's a matter of starting the investigation. Now, as we discussed yesterday, so dukkha satya. So what is dukkha satya? The noble truth of suffering. So that is what yesterday I already touched upon in a way. What is dukkhang ariya satyang? Jatipi dukkha, jarapi dukkha, vyadipi dukkho, maranampi dukkhang, appiyehi sampayogo dukkho, piyehi vipayogo dukkho, yampiccan nalabati tampi dukkhang, sankittena panchupadanakkhandha dukkha. So this is a very common known fact available in the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta. Most of you are familiar with, where Buddha mentioned in first sense, very general, easy to understand form of suffering. Jatipi dukkho. So when birth happens, it's suffering. Jarapi dukkho. When we are aging, decaying, so it is a suffering. Vyadipi dukkho. When the body gets sick, it is suffering. Even the mind gets sick, it is suffering. Maranampi dukkhang. When death happens, approaches, it is also suffering. Appiyehi sampayogo dukkho. When we have to deal with certain disliked people, it is kind of a suffering. Appiyehi vipayogo dukkho. When we are detached from the loved ones, it is suffering. And yampiccan nalabati tampi dukkhang. So what we desire when we are not being able to acquire, that is going to be a suffering. And the last thing is the most important one in terms of the depth, sankittena panchupadanakkhandha dukkha. In brief, all the five grasping groups, five grasping aggregates are suffering. Now that is where we can come to a deeper understanding in the Satipatthana practice. So Buddha in certain other suttas mention, say for example in the Khanda Sutta, in the Satya Sangyutta, Buddha mentioned Katamancha Bhikkhave Dukkhang Ariya Satchang Panchupadana Khandatissa Vachaniya. So there Buddha categorically mentioned, okay, what is the noble truth of suffering? It is nothing but a synonym for the 5 grasping aggregates. So that means we have to understand that. So the task assigned for us to operate, how to operate on the First Noble Truth, is that it has to be fully understood. Pariññayyang. It has to be fully understood. So the 5 grasping groups have to be fully understood. So that means the grasping group of form, the form aggregate has to be fully understood. The feeling aggregate has to be fully understood. Perception aggregate has to be fully understood. Formations aggregate has to be fully understood. And the consciousness aggregate has to be fully understood. So now what is the process to do that? So we can use the mindfulness practice, Satipatthana practice to do that. So that's why it's a kind of a direct understanding. Now all of you are able to kind of name what are the 5 aggregates. All of us are able to know to some extent what is form aggregate, what is feeling aggregate, what is perceptions aggregate, etc. But that is merely a theoretical knowledge. But that is not enough. So what Buddha mentioned here is Pariññayyang, it comes along with the Abhiññayyang, Abhijanati or Abhiññayyang, where you are using your direct knowledge to understand. It is not your book knowledge or borrowed knowledge that Buddha say like this, so I know that. It is not like that. But we have to have our sharp faculties through which, so we are directly knowing that. It has a significant difference. So there is suffering, so you are knowing that, the presence of suffering. There is the form aggregate, you know its operation through your direct touch. There is feeling aggregate currently operating, you know directly through your own faculties, through your own skills, that it is there, how it is behaving. There are various perceptions happening right now within our own mind. Yes, you are seeing that through your own direct knowledge. There are various formations happening right now within the mind. Yes, you are able to understand that right now at this very moment. So likewise, we have to develop that kind of a skill to look at them at this very moment. It is not mere theoretical understanding, that is also important. After that, after we have the theoretical understanding, now we need to look at them properly through our mind, through our concentrated mind. So that is why the necessary concentration is important. Without the concentration, if the mind gets distracted again and again, if we can't maintain enough attention, then we can't properly understand. So we need certain amount of concentration. That concentration also has to be sustained for a certain amount of time so that we are able to understand things as they truly are. So that sense, the concentration is important. Now, that concentration is not the concentration that we are talking in a higher, deep jhana, what we are talking here. So here in the mindfulness practice, in the Satipatthana practice, we can continue with the necessary amount of concentration where it allows us to look at different phenomena as they truly are. So that kind of concentration, sometimes called as access concentration, upachara samadhi, where our mind is not getting distracted, again not being absorbed, not being completely sort of in a trance kind of thing, but rather fully aware. And most importantly, the knowing part is available. What is not only the mindfulness, but even the sampajano, that is the clear comprehension. So in the Satipatthana practice, one important thing is mindfulness and clear comprehension go hand in hand. So it is not an absorbed kind of concentration, rather the necessary amount of concentration allows us to maintain mindfulness, plus it has the capacity to look at things as they truly are. We have the ability to clearly comprehend. So different phenomena are there, we have the capacity to clearly comprehend that. So probably you have heard the statement made by the Buddha. Ekayano ayam bhikkhave maggo sattanang visuddhiya soka pariddavanang samatikkamaya. So likewise Buddha do that introduction. So sati and sampajano is properly emphasized there. Mindfulness and clear comprehension. Now we not only have to be mindful, but we have to clearly comprehend. For that there is a necessary amount of concentration. That is what we are talking here. Now suppose we develop that amount of concentration, focus, attention, and now we are looking at various phenomena. As we discussed yesterday, to some extent, probably we are looking at various bodily phenomena, maybe various element characteristics, hardness, softness, roughness, smoothness, heaviness, lightness. So these are the earth element characteristics. And then movements, vibrations. So these are the air element characteristics. Then say heat and cold. These are the heat element characteristics. Then the fluidity, cohesion. So these are the water element characteristics. Now we are looking at them objectively. It is not that I am there or I am so and so. Rather, hardness is available. There is suffering. So we need to remember that stock phrase Buddha is referring. Idang dukkhang ariya satchang. There is hardness, there is softness, there is a vibration, there is a movement, there is heat, there is cold. So we are putting them into the proper perspective. Looking at them objectively. Step back and looking at them objectively. Sometimes we call it as parato. It is not belong to me, it is kind of a conditioned phenomena. So now I am looking at them properly at their correct position. Keep them at the correct position. Now, as we are continuing, now we can touch the next noble truth as well. So the second noble truth. So Buddha mentioned what is the second noble truth. Idang dukkha samudayang ariya satchang. So that is the origination of suffering or the cause of suffering. Yayang tanha pono bhavika nandiraga sahagata tatra tatra abhinandini seyyate idang kama tanha bhavatanha vibhavatan. So this is the phrase Buddha introduced as the second noble truth. So there is what we call the craving. Yayang tanha pono bhavika. There is craving which is possible to generate a new existence, possible to generate a new kind of state in the mind. Nandiraga sahagata, it is delighted with lust. And tatra tatra abhinandini, it has the capacity to attach our mind then and there. Seyyate idang, here it is, what is called the kama tanha, the sensual desire. Bhava tanha, the desire to continue, the desire to become. And vibhava tanha, the desire to get rid of. Now these are the things now we need to recognize within our own mind. So we all know what is dukkha samudaya satcha, and even a Sunday school boy might give the answer. But that is not what is expected. Rather, when it is operating in our mind, are we able to look at it? Look at also in that proper perspective. There is suffering. There is cause of suffering. Similarly, the same approach Buddha here also looking at, where we are putting them in the proper perspective. There is desire, there is craving, there is sensual desire, there is a desire to become, there is a desire to get rid of. So when such thing is operating in our mind, are we able to look at that properly? Are we able to look at that objectively? Very interesting in a way, because typically we can't do that. So if you are a too much moral person, suppose when there is lust arise in your mind, then you start criticizing yourself. Why this is happening? I am so and so. This much of precepts are there. I am leading this spiritual life a long time. How this lustful thought is arising? So you attribute a person to that, and you are criticizing yourself, condemning yourself for having those desires. On the other hand, when there is a desire to become, sometimes we can't even notice that. We immediately become more ambitious and immediately start following that and immediately try to accomplish our desire. we can't even notice that this is a kind of a becoming process. That's an invitation to become something. I am not happy in the present moment, but inviting for me to become someone else. So I can't even notice that this is a kind of a very subtle desire operating in the mind. On the other hand, when desire to get rid of a certain situation is there where I don't want to be there, I want to get rid of it. I want to get rid of Nissarana because it's very noisy. Isn't it? So I want to get rid of. So we hate that. I want to come out of that. I want to run away from it. So desire to get rid of. So basically, so that when that kind of an approach, when that kind of an invitation, when that kind of a desire operating in our mind, are we able to look at it objectively? Very challenging in a way. Now, that's why sometimes looking at the body is easy. But when we are looking at the mind, when these subtle desires are operating in the mind, is in a way pretty challenging. So that's why we can't immediately come here. Rather, we have to take Buddha's teaching so these understandings are being somewhat simplified. Or there are different techniques, different methods that Buddha come across so that we also can follow those methods. Ultimately, we are achieving the same thing. Say, for example, when we are developing mindfulness, when we are practicing anapanasati, so we are slowly understanding how breathing happens, and in breath, out breath, all these things are now capable to look at objectively. That understanding, that practice now we are developing. And say, right now you are looking at it objectively, and even that you are able to understand from the elements point of view. For example, it's no more in-breath, no more very much an out-breath, but it is a little vibrations, maybe touch sensations, maybe little movements, or maybe hardness, maybe softness, maybe lightness, maybe heat, maybe cold. Now we are looking at from the elements point of view. And even that, when you are closely looking at, probably we might understand, so it also does not exist for a long time. It also has the ability or has the nature of arising and very short existence and then quickly disappearing or quickly passing away. If we apply the same thing to the feelings, so there are pleasurable feelings, there are painful feelings, there are equanimous feelings. Now you are able to look at them properly. When there is pleasurable feelings, yes, there is a pleasurable feeling. When there is a painful feeling, yes, there is a painful feeling. So like that, you are able to now look at it patiently, carefully, objectively. It is not that I am suffering, it is not that I am happy, but there is a pleasurable feeling. There is a painful feeling. There is an equanimous feeling. So we are putting them in the proper place. Step back and watch it properly. Suppose we are doing that carefully. So as we are continuing that practice, so this understanding is now evolving, growing. So that is why it is not mere superficial understanding, but as we practice, our faculties are sharpening. So when we are pay close attention to a, say, painful feeling, at the beginning the understanding we might have is that there is a beginning of this painful feeling. It lasts for 5 minutes, almost like 5 minutes, and it disappeared after that. So that may be the understanding I had some time back. But today, probably when you are observing some similar thing, probably you might see it is not a kind of a long kind of a painful feeling, but it is divided to many small parts. Now there are little painful feelings that quickly arise and quickly passing away, quickly arise and quickly passing away. So your mindfulness has sharpened. That clarity of the mind has sharpened. Concentration has sharpened. Your resolution has improved so that you can recognize very subtle aspects. So that, as I mentioned, that clear comprehension has improved. So you can look at subtle details of that whatever the feeling. So you are looking at it properly, and now the feeling divides itself, and we can recognize how quickly they arise and pass away, how quickly it is arising and passing away. Now this is another stage of Satipatthana. Samudaya Dhammanupassīvā Vedanāsu Vihirati, Vaya Dhammanupassīvā Vedanāsu Vihirati. So we are looking at how it is arising, how it is passing away, how it is arising, how it is passing away. Now, in one sense, we can say we are learning, we are trying to understand the dukkha satya, the noble truth of suffering. But what happens when we are understanding that? One interesting statement actually is available in another sutta, what we call as Nāgita Sutta. Buddha mentioned like this: Upadāna khandesu udyabhyānupassino vihirato upadāne patikkoleta santhāti. So this is a very interesting statement where Buddha makes. Buddha say, when you are looking at the five grasping aggregates, particularly they are arising and passing away in nature, and you are continuing that practice, upadāne patikkoleta santhāti. Now you feel this grasping is a burden. Not those phenomena, but the grasping is a burden to you. So mind feels detached. It's a kind of a natural effect. So when the understanding develops, when the wisdom develops, naturally the process result in kind of a dispassion. Rather than grasping, now you want to abandon things. Rather than holding things, now you feel it's a burden to hold things. Rather than embracing things, you feel it's embracing or holding or grasping, clinging is a burden. So that's a kind of a natural effect within us, within the mind, develops as we see the arising and passing away nature of various phenomena. So in a way, sometimes we don't know the theory, even though we see the arising and passing away nature of the phenomena. But internally here Buddha is saying, when you do that, there's a significant change happen within you, where the grasping releases and detachment improves, dispassion increases. So is dispassion opposite of the passion? Is dispassion opposite of the craving? Isn't it? Now we see that how Buddha asked us to operate in the second noble truth. That you know the first noble truth, he asked us to understand, pariññaya. So what he asked us to do on to the second noble truth? Pahatabbang, isn't it? We got to abandon that, we need to let go of it. So isn't it happening now? Now say you are practicing Satipatthana, you are seeing the arising and passing away of the phenomena, and Buddha say, when you are seeing that arising and passing away, udyabhyānupassino vihirato, patukkoleta santhāti. Now you feel it's a burden. I need to keep it aside. I can't hold it anymore. It's a burden to me. But the mind prefers to be lighter. Mind prefers to be alone. Mind prefers to be secluded. A kind of a dispassion is now being developed. So slowly that means the abandoning process has started. Abandoning process has started. We were very much like operating in the craving, rather in the first noble truth. But even the second noble truth is now operating. Slowly, the abandoning process has started. So interestingly, these are fairly interacted. So we can't actually take only one. So when we are practicing in the first noble truth, so that means we are working on the second noble truth, we are working on the third noble truth, we are working on the fourth noble truth. So that's the beauty of the Dhamma. So these four noble truths are fairly interconnected. We started with the first noble truth, yes, but we are working on the second, third and the fourth as well. Now, when we are continuing that, so that means slowly, the abandoning process also has started. Now mind is capable of, even with the pleasurable feeling, you are now further enhancing your capacity to look at it objectively. Previously it was maybe difficult. You have to purposely step back. Mind prefers to be with it. Mind prefers to attach with it. You need to instruct the mind to come back, step back, maintain the gap, maintain the distance. And when there's a painful feeling, probably you have to remind yourself, be patient for a while. But now, as the dispassion is arising, probably you don't need to do that because mind is now capable of doing that. There are painful feelings, there are pleasurable feelings, but mind has the capacity to dispassionately look at it. So that means we are growing our faculties. It is not that we are stagnating, we are in a way staying at the same place. Rather, as we continue our practice, these skills are being slowly developed. Faculties are being slowly sharpened. Now, on the other hand, assume that we are looking at the mind. Now, this is what I actually discussed. Already what I have discussed is very much related to the, say, Kayanupassana or Vedananupassana, where as we see arising and passing away nature, automatically, internally what happens according to the Buddha is a kind of a dispassion arising. That you feel like these upadanas, clingings, graspings are a burden. So that mind prefers to be lighter. It prefers to be alone. Prefers to live alone, without attachment, without grasping. But on the other hand, how about directly watching the mind? So that is the beauty in the Chittanupassana. Say you are directly confronting the desires. Now another interesting sutta is what we call as the Patama Sandittika Sutta. So sometimes we know that when we pay respect to Dhamma, so we know Sandittiko Dhammo. So that's a very important characteristics we attribute to Dhamma. So it is can be seen right now, immediate. Sandittika, immediate. So one person actually asked from Buddha, Bhante, what is this Sandittika? Everyone is talking Sandittiko Dhammo. So what is Sandittika? So Buddha is asking from him. So when there is lust available in you, when there is greed available in you, are you able to look at it? Are you able to understand that? Are you able to understand its presence? So Buddha is asking like this. Santangva ajjattang lobang, attime ajjattang lobosti pajanasi. So when there is the presence of greed, are you capable of understanding the presence of greed? So then this person says, yes, I can understand. So then Buddha mentioned, Evam ko sivaka sandittiko dhammo hoti. Then sivaka, you got to know that is the sandittika dhamma. So that means, so it's a direct observation of your own mind. At that moment, if you are able to understand there is a desire, yes, it's not that desire only that we are coming across, that the immediacy of the Dhamma. So in order to understand that, we need to have the capacity, by the way. Typically what happens is not that. Typically what happens is we don't know even that this desire is automatically I am being operating according to the desire. I am being driven by the desire. I am being a fool, I am being a slave to the desire. I couldn't look at it objectively. I couldn't step back and see, there is a greed. There is a desire. There is a lust. We don't have that capacity, typically. But when we are practicing, so we have to develop this kind of a desire, this kind of a skill. When there is a desire available in the mind, how about looking at it? Rather than fulfilling it, rather than obeying to that desire, how about looking at it? There is a desire. So that is where the Sandittika Dhamma comes to the picture. So now you can see the similarity. Say, when there is a breath, there is in-breath, there is out-breath. It's the same approach, isn't it? Now, when there is desire, there is desire. When there is, say, lust, there is lust. So likewise, whenever there is a defilement available in the mind, if we are able to look at it objectively, it is not my desire. It is not that I hate desire, but it is a desire. So if we are putting it in proper perspective, we are going in a different angle now, isn't it? We are operating in a different angle. So that is very, very important. So when it comes to Chittanupassana, so we are putting whatever the thought in that level. There is no any preference either to the unwholesome thoughts nor to the wholesome thoughts even. Saragang va chittan saragang chittan dipajanati, vitaragang va chittan vitaragang chittan dipajanati. Sadosan chittan dipajanati, vitadosan chittan dipajanati. Now you are keeping them at their proper place. And you operate at a very higher level, in that sense. You are no more driven by any of these, but you are looking at how they are behaving. Now, it is in a way trying to understand how tanha, craving, present in the mind. When craving is present in the mind, there is tanha, there is greed, there is lust. So, what condition tanha? What is the cause of tanha? Probably, if you can remember the Patissamuppada, Vedana Paccaya Tanha, isn't it? So when there is a pleasurable feeling, automatically there may be an inclination in the mind, I want it. I want to have it. Let me have it. Will I get it tomorrow? So kind of an inclination, kind of a desire. So you awake and you have a kind of a thrill and you want that. So when there is some favorable, pleasant experience, kind of happy experience, pleasurable experience, I want it. So that is the immediacy in a way. So the Vedana in a way conditions the desire. Vedana conditions craving in the mind. Now when we are practicing Chittanupassana, if we are able to look at in that way, so assume that there are different feelings available, you practice some amount of Vedananupassana, and now you are trying to understand your mind. Now, when there is a feeling, we can be carefully see, is there any desire arising in the mind? Is there any craving happens in the mind? If so, we are operating not only in the first noble truth, even in the second noble truth. We are trying to understand craving. And after understanding that, what are we going to do? Going to follow it? No, to abandon it, isn't it? So the second noble truth, what to do, the practice is the abandoning. We need to let go of. Rather than driven by craving, rather than act according to the craving, now we need to let go of that. There is a desire. Okay, I need to let go of that. So it's a very, in a way, very challenging process, even though we are talking it like an easy process. When it is happening within our own mind, are we able to recognize that and let go of it? Or are we able to recognize and adhere to it, implement it, being a slave to it? So typically the second thing is usually happens. When there is a beautiful, pleasurable feeling, I am experiencing it, it's very interesting. Mind says, yes, why not? Let me have it. So immediately my hand may go there. I want it. But at that time, if I am capable, probably, if I am able to understand, yes, there is a desire because of the feeling, pleasurable feeling. So, fairly introspection. I mean, we have to come back to ourselves. So the problem is now we are trying to solve within ourselves. So rather than trying to attack desire, now we are recognizing desire. Oh, there is a desire. There is craving. There is greed. Something like that. Now, if we follow desire, what happens? The next stage is what we call as the upadana, the clinging. So then mind is fairly blocked. Mind feel burdened. Mind feel like heavy. Mind feel like little tensed. Because we grasped. The clinging has happened. So the clinging actually has a significant impact in the mind, even more than the tanha, even more than the desire. So now mind has somewhat colored. Now, upadana paccaya bhavo, now you have become something else. So basically, you can see, actually in certain suttas, like, I can't remember the name, where Buddha mentioned how the Paticca that the arising side, samudaya side, Buddha say as the cause of suffering. Probably that is mentioned in the certain suttas, where now typically we consider only tanha as the dukkha samudaya, the cause of suffering. But in certain suttas, Buddha mentioned how the conditioned formation of suffering, ultimately the mass of suffering is what the result. Probably you know that avijja paccaya sankhara, sankhara paccaya vijnanam, vijnana paccaya nama rupam. So likewise, everything is going. Then jati paccaya jara marana soka parideva dukkha domana supayasa sambhavanti. Eva metassa kevalassa dukkhakkhandassa samudayo hoti. That is the generation, the formulation of the mass of suffering. So there are certain suttas, Buddha say not that tanha, craving as the cause of suffering, but the cause of suffering as this conditioned formation, generation of the mass of suffering according to the Paticca. You can see, how he has connected the Dhamma in a way. So if we are looking at our mind, how we unknowingly being ignorant and then did a lot of formations in the mind and do a lot of fabrications in the mind, accordingly mind becomes tensed. We operated at the six sense bases, various feelings arise, now craving arise, and now grasping happen. I am born to a new state. A becoming has happened. The bhavatanha, the becoming process has happened. It is not that I am born to a new existence, to a new life, but within this life, now my mind is operating at a different level. I have lost the present moment. I am not mindful now. Mind has completely drifted. Present moment I lost, but the mind is in a completely different level, completely kind of an illusionary level. So mind is now in a kind of a, say, fascination, kind of a illusion, proliferation, something like that. Now I am born to a new level, new world. Say, for example, even certain advertisements, that's how they are advertising. Say, when you are drinking a particular kind of a soft drink, so you are closing your eyes, taking it drip by drip, and you are born to a new, what you call the tasty world. You can't beat the feeling. So they are advertising like that. So that means, so we are born to a new mental state, and that we enjoy, but ultimately it also collapses. So suffering is the end. So basically that conditioned arising of the suffering is also Buddha emphasized in the Paticca that is being recognized as a dukkha samudaya in many suttas. And if we are able to look at it in our mind, how we are being ignorant and ultimately end up with suffering. How the mind is creating a self and all this stuff and ultimately end up with suffering. So if we are able to look at it, now what's the result? Is the opposite is start. So the kind of a dispassion arises to this whole process. So typically we can't see it. Typically we are being driven by it. We are being fooled by that. And ultimately we end up with a lot of suffering. We are being stressed, we are being tensed, we are being stressed, we are being burdened. But if we are looking at them carefully, how these things are happening, then the opposite starts happening. So the whole entanglement become unentangled. So that starts to kind of dissolve the whole process, disintegrate the whole thing. Now you can look at how the mind is operating, how mind is driven by craving, how mind is desiring to achieve something. You want to become someone else. I want to become this, I want to become that, I want this. how various different desires are operating in our mind. And unknowingly we are following that. Ignorantly we are following that. But if we are able to step back and understand what's really going on, is it I am being fooled, I am being conditioned, is mind get tensed, is mind being burdened, is the mind is grasping. So if we are able to look at that, now it's a matter of dissolving, removing or abandoning that, relinquishing that again, so the mind become relaxed. So in a way, in the Satipatthana practice, so we even though starts with very basics, very simplified practices like walking, sitting, etc. But slowly we are going to these deeper levels where we are starting to understand our own emotions, our own desires, how mind is operating, what are the tendencies operating within the mind. So these are the deep aspects actually we are slowly understanding within the mind. So as we slowly understand these deeper tendencies, so slowly the picture become quite evident. What's really going on? So how we are being trapped. And what are the desires we are sometimes being pulled. So all these things become somewhat known to us. Now slowly we can stop that. Rather than following the desires, then we can look at it objectively. There's a desire, I better avoid getting entangled with it, getting absorbed with it, followed by it again. Yesterday I followed that, but let me try not to follow it today. Today also I am seeing that beautiful picture. There is a desire arising. Okay, let me recognize desire as desire. Yesterday I have seen, say, a good dish, and I immediately took it, want to have it tomorrow. Yes, it's available today. Desire is arising. Let me see the desire. So are we able to have that kind of an approach? So it's a kind of an experiment that we have to initiate within ourselves. So as we operate in the Chittanupassana level, so if we are able to do this kind of a practice, it will be very kind of a dynamic practice. It is not that we always have to sit and practice. Rather, during the daily activities also we can do it. So when we see something, how a desire can arise. When we hear a beautiful song, how a desire can arise. Because that is where the possibility to arise, the desire. Say for example, you are simply closing your eyes and sitting cross-legged to wait to understand tanha. Sometimes tanha may not arise because you are fully alert. But once you go out, there may be a beautiful flower. Immediately there is a desire. It's a beautiful flower. A desire may arise. So are we able to notice that? So that is where we have to be very practical in the practice. Not that we have to understand all these things while sitting, while we are operating in the daily activities, daily level, mundane activities. So that is where we have to have a kind of a observation in our mind. So when there are desires arising due to various causes, now we need to trace them. Now we need to look at them. How desires are arising. And when they are arising, what are we going to do? We need to let them go. Rather than act according to them, rather than following them, rather than being fooled by them, rather than being driven by them, we need to let them go. A desire has arisen, let it go. So Buddha mentioned, Anuppannasa kamachandasa upado hoti tancha pajanati. So when there was no sensual desire, but now there's a sensual desire arising. Now you see the arising side. And once you see that properly, if you are not promoting it, if you are not feeding it, it naturally fades away. It's a quality. So it is not that I am pushing it away. It's not that I am suppressing it. But it has the nature to naturally fade away. Uppannasa kamachandasa pahino hoti tancha pajanati. So when the arisen sensual desire has passed away, that also the yogi can see. Pahinasa kamachandasa, I think anupado hoti tancha pajanati. And for some time, that passed away desire may not come back. similar kind of desire may not come back. To some extent, now your mind is peaceful. So you can see in the Satipatthana practice, all these things are fairly interconnected. So you are looking at them objectively at the first level as the dukkha satya. It is the different kind of aggregates. But as we are operating, now we are developing certain skills so that we can actually accept the second noble truth as well. We are looking at different desires operating within the mind, and we are now practicing so that the desires are slowly abandoned, slowly let go of rather than following them. Okay, I think with that I can conclude today's Dhamma sermon. So Bhante Dhammajiva will continue from tomorrow onwards. And with that, my participation ends to this retreat. So thank you very much for attentive listening.